Pesach's Bava Kamma Daf Tzadi test begins in the middle of the Gemara's discussion of the concept of uman koine b'shevach kli or not. So this is a halacha which was said by Rav Asi, that if you give someone a kli to work on and to fix, the improvement that he makes on the kli belongs to him, and when he gives it back to you all fixed or all improved, he's selling you the improvement. It's not that he improves it for you, but the improvement he owns, the kli you own, the improvement he owns, and he sells it back to you. The reason that's important is because if he then ruins it, he breaks it, he only has to pay you for the damage to the kli. He doesn't have to pay you for that improvement, because that improvement never belonged to you until he sells it back to you. So he made an improvement which belonged to him, and he destroyed his own thing, but he doesn't have to pay you for that. Now, the Gemara tries to bring a proof to this from a brisa that discusses somebody gives wool to a worker to color, to dye, and when they did the dyeing of the wool, they put it in a pot which they heated over a fire, and it was filled with all kinds of plants that gave coloration. What happened here is that it got burned and it destroyed the color. The coloring agent was overcooked and it got ruined. So the halacha that the Brisa says that he has to pay him for the wool. So you see, he has to pay for the wool only for the kli which belonged to the original owner. He does not have to pay for the coloring job that he did. It must be that he owns it himself, and therefore he doesn't need to pay the owner, because as long as he didn't give the wool back to him and it got ruined, at that point he never ruined the coloring job, didn't belong to the owner, that he should need to pay him for it. So the answer is no. We're talking about where it got burned before the coloration ever happened. There was never a quality coloring. It got burned before that happened, and therefore it was messed up in the first place. There was never any improvement in the kli that he needs to pay for. And now Shmuel says that. So Gemara says the fact that Shmuel says that seems to imply that that Shmuel holds that had the improvement been made and then it got ruined, that he would have to pay for that improvement, which means that Shmuel argues on this halacha of Rav Asi of uman kind of b'shavach kli, would hold that no, the uman actually is mashbiach the kli in the property of the original owner. So is that true that Shmuel argues on Rav Asi? It's important for us to know, because halacha would be like Shmuel. So the Gemara says no, not necessarily the Shmuel argue in our normal case. Shmuel here could be referring to a specific case where the coloring agent, the herbs, the dye itself actually belonged to the Baal Bayis. So the original owner gave him wool and the paint, and he said, here, do the job. And by him burning it, he ruined the paint. That's why he would need to pay for it had the job had happened before, had the dyeing actually happened in the right way. So the Gemara asks him that, if that's true, then Shmuel should have to say he needs to pay him for the paint. He ruined the paint. So Shmuel doesn't say that. So the Gemara therefore says, okay, so that's not really the case. Shmuel doesn't necessarily hold this way. Shmuel was just pushing off that there's no proof from here to Rav Asi, because you could say that the Brisa is talking about where there was never a coloring job that was completed in the first place. However, that's not to say that Shmuel argues on Rav Asi. The Gemara now brings another raya. This is from a brisa discussing somebody who gives a talus to a worker in order to complete the talus, and he finishes the job. And the question is, when is he owed the money that if the person who hired him doesn't pay it, he's over on the Isser of Baltalin of delaying wages. So the brisa says, if he informed him, even if he waits 10 days, he's not over Baltalin, because the money is not due, even though he's been informed that the work is over, that the work is finished. However, if he actually gives it to him, even if he gives him in the middle of the day, as soon as the sun sets, he's over on Maltan because the money is due then. So now, we're talking about a worker who finished clothing here. And it says that he's considered to be a worker which has to be paid a wage. That means that the worker doesn't own it. If the worker owned the improvements and then he's selling it back to the original owner, he couldn't be Baltalan for that. Whenever he gives it and sells it, he sells it. There's no Baltalan on that. There's only Baltalan on when you're being paid for a job. So you see here a proof against Rav Asi that it's not uman kaina b'shevach kli. So the Gemara answers, no, we're talking about a situation where the work that he did not include a shevach. What he did was he softened the clothing by combing it. So you're actually wearing it out more. It's not an improvement. And therefore there's nothing for him to be kaina. He just needs to be paid for the work. Somebody else, but there is an improvement. If it wouldn't be an improvement, he wouldn't hire somebody to do it. Obviously, the softening is an improvement, and he considers it an improvement, so he owns the softening. The same thing should apply So the Gemara answer is no. Okay, the answer is that we're not referring to where he did the job and he was paid for the job. He was paid per hour. He was paid as a worker. If he's being paid per hour, then you can't say that he's clean of the shevach. There for sure the shevach isn't his. There even Ravasi would agree that the shevach isn't his because he's not being paid for the shevach. He's just being paid for the work, hour by hour. And the example the Gemara gives is if he soaks it and he wrings it dry by squeezing it with his feet, he walks on it. That's how he finishes the clothing. Okay, now, the Gemara accepts that, but the Gemara asks, what we thought in the Hamamina, that he's being paid for the job, this should be a raya to something Rav Shesha said. Rav Shesha said that if someone is being paid for a job, he's a koblin, he's a contractor to just get the job done, not per hour, there's still an Isser Baltolan if you don't pay him on time. So you see here, there is still an Isser Baltolan, according to our original understanding, that we thought he was being paid for the job, not he's being paid per hour. So the Gemara says, does this Rav Shesha fit with Ravasi? It sounds like not, because it sounds like Rav Shesha is saying, even where you are paid for the job, so there's a shevach for the kli, there's still baltal, which sounds like you don't own it. The Gemara answers no. It could really be that Rav Shesha agrees to Ravasi. Rav Shesha was referring to a situation where you're being paid for a job, but there's no shevach, such as if you're being paid to deliver a letter, there is no improvement, you're just being paid for the job. In a case like that, he's saying that there is a baltalin, even though it's just per job and not per hour. Even Ravasi would agree there possibly, because Ravasi is just saying you're kaina shevach. Here there's no shevach to be kaina. The one now brings its next right. This from a sugya in Kedushin, which we had about yeshna l'schiris m'tchilu atzayif and l'schiris el b'sayif. So the case here is, the Gemara here wants to say that it's a machlekes tanaim. Actually, this question of uman kaina b'shevach kli. The case here is where a woman gives materials to make jewelry to a man, and she says, make bracelets, nose rings, or finger rings for me, and I'll be mekadesh to you. So the kesef kedushin is the work that he's going to put into it. So the two opinions are Rav Meir, who says that she is mekudeshes with it, and the Chachamim who say that she's not mekudeshes until the money reaches her hand. The Gemara says the money can't mean those jewels, because Rav Meir obviously also meant until the jewels get to her hand. It's as long as the worker is holding on to it, she didn't receive anything, so that can't be what she couldn't be mekudeshes with that. So we're not referring to the money of those, meaning those jewels that he made for her. We're referring to other money, and the Chachamim are saying that this kiddushin doesn't work at all. Rabbi Meir says it works when he gives her the jewelry, because he's giving her the work. And the Chachamim say it doesn't work at all until she gets other money from this. So now, there are three factors you need here to take into account. One is, this means when a person's working on your object for you, or he's doing work for you, is it owed all along? And until you pay it at the end, until the job is finished, it becomes an obligation, it becomes a debt that you owe. Or do you say, no, and once he's finished, it becomes due and payable on the spot, and there is no obligation. It's not like you built up a debt from before. Now, when you give it, he owes it. Now, the first version, then, it would be a milva. What she would owe him for his work would be a loan, because she owes him the money as he's creating it. Now, the second issue is, do you say that a person is makadesh b'milva works or not? If a man wants to be makadesh in isha by saying, you owe me money, I'll be meichel the money, I'm not actually giving you anything, I'm just forgiving what you owe, could you be makadeshes with that? And the third is, do you say that the uman owns the shevach kli or not? So the Gemara first wants to say that this is machlokes about uman owning a shevach kli or not. And is it something that the uman owns, which means that everybody really holds that otherwise it wouldn't work, because the money is owed as a loan, and it's no good, and therefore the only way Rav Meir holds that this could work is because he's saying that it's a shevach, and therefore it belongs to her. It belongs to him, and he gives it to her when he gives her the actual jewelry. That's he's giving her the improvements. So the Gemara, no, that's not necessarily the pshat. It could be either of the other two. It could be that really we hold uman einay koina meshevach kli, and the only shaila is, could she be mekadeshes with a milva? Either way, he could hold that way. Either he could hold mekadeshes that mekadesh milva is mekadeshes, or he could hold it even if mekadesh milva is not mekadeshes. This is not the case of mekadesh milva, because it's only finished, it's only due at the end, and it's not a pre-existing milva that he's meichel. Now, Rava says another pshat. Rava says really everyone holds yashan l'schiris mitchilu atzayif, and therefore it's alone. Everybody agrees he cannot be mekadesh by being meichel alone. And everybody also holds that there is no shevach kli, that uman is not kleina shevach kli, therefore he's not giving her anything. What then is the pshat? Why is there a machlokes whether or not she is mekudeshes here? So the Gemara says he added something. He put on a little jewel or pruta. He did something of his own. And the machlokes is as follows. She's now receiving two things from him. She's receiving the mechila of the loan, that he doesn't have to pay her, that she doesn't have to pay him for the improvements that he made on her objects. At the same time, she's receiving the extra thing that he added onto it. And the question is, which one does she intend to be mekudeshes with? The pruta, the thing that he added, that would work. The improvements, that would not work, because that's mekadesh b'milva. And the machlokes is, what does she have in mind? The Rabbanan say her intent is on the loan, the mechila of the loan, on the schirus, on the job, and therefore it's no good. And Rabbi Meir says it's on the pruta, and therefore it is good. Now, Rava shows you have a similar machlokes and a brisa. Go to brisa on a similar case where there's a three-way machlokes, and the Gemara is going to explain the machlokes between each of the three opinions. So the brisa says that if a man says to a woman, "Be miskadeshes to me," in one of two cases, either he said, "With the work that I did for you in the past," or the work I'm going to do for you in the future. So if it's the work that I did for you in the past, that she's not mekudeshes with, because that's a milva for sure. It's already money that she owes, and it's being meichel that. So work in the future. So now you have a machlokes. The Bava Kamma says that works, mekudeshes. Rabbi Nosson says that does not work, ein mekudeshes. Rabbi Nasi says really it should be ein mekudeshes. However, if he adds a piece on, then it will be mekudeshes. Now, what's the machlokes between the Bava Kamma and Rabbi Nosson? Schirus. Could he be mekadesh with schirus? What's the machlokes between Rabbi Nosson and Rabbi Nasi? That's about this question of Mulvan Pruta. What does she have in mind? Does she intend for the pruta? That's what Rebbe holds, and therefore it is mekudeshes. Does she intend for the milveh? That's what Rebbe Nosson holds, and therefore it's not mekudeshes. Gemara now brings a related halacha of Shmuel and a related discussion. Shmuel says a shaychit, who is an expert, who messes up the shchita, and he ruined it, so he needs to pay for it. He's a mazik, and he's a posheya, and it's as if someone said to him, shecht here, and he shechted somewhere else. He didn't fulfill the job. So Shmuel's psak is that a sheikhet who messed up the shechita needs to pay. So Gemara asks, what's with the expressions here? He says, first he says he's a mazik, then he says he's a posheya. What's the repetition about? So the Gemara says, if he would just say he's a mazik, you may think that we're saying that really he's an ayin. This is not his fault. However, he's a mazik because he was paid to do the job. Someone who's paid is chayiv for ayin anyway. You would not know that if he's doing it for free, in which case he's like a shem mechinam, which he's pater for ayin, you would know that he's chayiv there also. Therefore, he has to say, not only is he a mazik, he's a posheya, and even if he's doing it for free, he should have done better. He should know. He should be careful, make sure that it doesn't happen. Now the Gemara asks a kasha on Shmuel's halacha. Bava Kamma bar Gira asks a question to Shmuel. We have a brisa that says if somebody gives an animal to a sheikhet to shecht, and he's menablet, he makes it in a vela. So if he's an expert, he's pater. If he's a regular person who really doesn't belong shechting, then he's chayiv. Then it says, if he paid him, whether he's a hedyot or he's an uman, he's chayiv. So you see that in uman you're only chayiv if you pay him, not like what Shmuel said that in uman you're chayiv even if you didn't pay him. So kash on Shmuel. So Shmuel said you're muddying the waters. Along came another one of the chachamim, and he asked him the same thing. So he said, you're taking that same thing that your friend took. And then he finally responded, and he said, I'm talking about Rabbi Meir, and you're telling me the Rabbanon. Why don't you pay attention to my words that I said, Maziku, Posheyahu, Nasik, he's a Mazik, he's a Posheya. It's as if he said Shecht here, and he shechted somewhere else. That Shita is Rabbi Meir, and I'm saying Rabbi Meir's opinion. You're asking me from the Chacham. So the Gemara asks, who's this Rabbi Meir, who's this Chacham, and what's he referring to? So we're obviously looking for a Shita of Rabbi Meir that's Mechayev you in an extra way. It holds you responsible even though you weren't directly mazik. Someone's first attempt is Rabbi Meir, who says that if you do a shmir, a pchusa, if you tie up your animal or if you put him behind the fence and he gets out and he attacks, you're still chayiv for the damage that he causes. Rabbi Meir holds it away. The Chavim argue. So maybe that's Rabbi Meir. Someone says that can't be because Rabbi Meir there is darshaning a specific pasuk in Hilchos Shmir. It says v'lo yishmerenu ba'olav. So that's nothing to do with this. So maybe it's a different Mishnah where we said if somebody gives someone wool to dye and he colors it wrong, red or black or red. So Rabbi Meir says he has to pay for the actual wool. So that's not comparable either. The Gemara says here we're talking about you didn't do the damage yourself directly, you just shechted it and became an avela, possibly because it shook by itself. But there he is actually mazik it. He put the wrong color into it. The Gemara says no, it's this Rabbi Meir. It says that if somebody's jug broke and he didn't pick it up and someone else fell on it, or his camel fell and he didn't pick him up and someone else tripped over it, so Rabbi Meir is b'chayav you and chachamim pater you. So you see here that we are ruling in Niskal Pesheya, who is a Pesheya for falling, and that's what Rabbi Meir is saying here. He's a Pesheya for falling. That's why he's chayiv. The Gemara now quotes on a related note. Rabbi Bava Kamma said, "Name Rabbi Yechanan, if a sheichet shechts and he ruins the animal, even if he's an expert, like the sheichet of Tzipayri, he's still responsible to pay for it." So why did Rabbi Yechanan really say that? Rabbi Kamma said there was an incident that happened in front of Rabbi Yechanan in a place called Knishta de Ma'ain, and he said, "Bring me a proof that you're an expert, qualified, and I'll pater you." So there he's willing to pater him. Here he's saying, Rabbi Kamma's quoting him is saying that he'd be chayiv even if he's a super expert. So where's this not a kasha? It depends if he's being paid or not. If he's being paid, he's responsible for it. Like a raisa of like an incident that happened with Rabbi Zera, who said that if somebody wants to be mechayiv a sheikh who messes up, you should make sure to pay him in advance. Then whereas a kasha, a raisa says somebody brings wheat to a grinder to grind and he didn't process it properly, he's supposed to soak it and peel off the shells and he didn't, and therefore he ended up with bran or morson, which is even coarser. Or if he gave him flour to make bread and he made bread that keeps falling apart, or if he gave him an animal to shecht and he was manabalit. So he's chayiv in all these situations because he's like someone who gets paid. So we're saying here that he's chayiv in all situations. And says no, it's because these situations have the status of someone who's getting paid, and therefore you need to be getting paid in order to be chayiv. The case happened that there was a case like this, which falls into this machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. It was a majority within a ring and a minority in a different ring. And the shayla was brought to Rav. So Rav asered the animal, but he said that the sheikh doesn't need to pay for it. So Rav Kahana Ravasi met the person who owned the animal, who took the loss here, and they said to him, Rav did two things to you. So the Gemara asked, what does he mean, two things? What were they trying to say? Were they trying to say two bad things? That first of all, Rav should have been machshir, should have passed like Rabbi Yehuda, that it's kosher. And if we're going to pass it that it's treif like the Rabbanan, at least they should have been mechayev the sheichet to pay you for it. So they nailed you. Rav hit you from both sides. So the Gemara says that can't be what Rav Asi and Rav Kahana were saying, because it's also to say that the halacha is when people are sitting in judgment in a court, whatever they paskin, you can't have one person come out and say, "Oh, I would have said like you, but what could I do? I was in the minority." It has to be a unanimous voice in the public facing expression of what the court rules. So they wouldn't have been able to say that. So it must be that what they were saying was that Rav did two favors for you. Rav was mesupik if the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda or like the chachamim. So he paskin that the animal is asur to be machem like the chachamim and prevent you from eating safek iser. On the other hand, it couldn't have been mechayev the sheichet because maybe it was kosher, and therefore he wouldn't have to pay anything. He didn't do anything wrong. So he therefore pater the sheichet, and therefore he prevented you from eating safek zela. So he prevented you from safek iser and prevented you from safek zela. Two favors he did for you.